Doval ready. Throwing. He struck him out with the slider, and he strikes out the side. Well, Doval with 8 days off. Maybe he needed a little bit of a rest. He never looked better than he looked here in this one. And the Giants take game 1, and it's their 8th win in their last 10, and have won 3 out of 4 to start this road trip. The Giants beating the Nationals 4-1.
If the San Francisco Giants are going to go on any sort of a run here, that's a big if still, even though they're playing much better baseball. The games are going to be a little tortuous. There are going to be 8th innings that look like they did tonight, where Taylor Rogers gets into a jam, and he and his brother Tyler ultimately get out of it, saving the day. I would anticipate that there will be higher stress 9th innings for Camilo Doval, but John Miller right on with the final call this evening. Maybe Camilo did need a little bit of a break here. More than a week of rest for Camilo Doval, and he strikes out the side in the 9th inning to cap off the Giants win. They take it 4-1 over the Washington Nationals. Welcome into Sports Phone KNBR. I am Kerry Crowley. We are rolling with you until 9 o'clock this evening. Going to spend at least the first hour or so talking about Giants baseball. We'll transition to the San Francisco 49ers, all the Brandon Ayuk news in the 8 o'clock hour this evening. Looking forward to hearing your phone calls. 415-808-KNBR is the number. Looking forward to taking your text messages as well on our Golden State Lumber text line here this evening. We're hanging out. We're having a good time, and the Giants are back at 500 for the first time since June 1st. How about that? It's been more than 2 months since this team that has been so disappointing for so much of this season really had the opportunity to get anyone's hopes up, because you can't think about making a run until you're at least 500. But the Giants are at that point now, and it might still be too soon to dream. It might still be too daunting to look at the National League wildcard standings and recognize how many teams still sit in front of them. And oh, by the way, how many of those teams are also playing really good baseball right now? But if you exclusively watch the Giants, and you've been tuned in since opening day way back on March 28th against the San Diego Padres, you know it's been a struggle to get to this point. And you know that this team is finally, even against a softer schedule, starting to look like the version that we thought we might see way back in spring training. With Logan Webb pitching well, with Blake Snell throwing well, with the bullpen doing its part, 11 2/3 innings of scoreless ball over the last 3 games, including that 8th inning tonight where it looked like that stretch would be broken as the Nats had runners on 2nd and 3rd for Taylor Rogers picked up back-to-back strikeouts, and Tyler entered to get a pop-out to close out that 8th inning. But nevertheless, the Giants now 57-57. It's a 48-game sprint to the finish. Again, the odds aren't in their favor, but now that they're back at 500, they have a chance. What say you? 415-808-KNBR is the number. Let's head out to Andrew in the East Bay. Andrew in the East Bay hitting leadoff for us this evening. Andrew, how's it going tonight?
I'm good. I'm great. How you doing?
I'm doing well on my end. Yeah, of course. What's on your mind?
I think so. I called in a couple of days ago in the trade deadline, and I phrased the question: why, as a fan base, as an organization, as players, accepting the mediocrity of what has occurred from the first half of the year to the trade deadline, not really getting a lot of direction. I just want to call back, and this is what I mean when it comes to setting a standard. And I don't care about any other teams that are in front of us. It is the standard that is set and based on the identity that we're able to start to find, to be able to then really get it going. And that's all I care about, and let's just keep the standard high.
Yeah, you know, Andrew, you bring up an interesting point in talking about identity, because tonight was the first time, well, actually over the last few days, with what Logan Webb and Blake Snell did last week, but I think it'll take a few weeks for us to see this. But I'm starting to get the sense that the starting pitching, if it performs up to the standard that it has set, like you said, and if it reaches its full potential during the final 2 months of the season, that starting pitching can be the identity for this ball club, right?
I agree with you. And I think, so on Saturday, I believe, Fox did the game when Chapman made the amazing throw. It said that the Giants were in the bottom half of baseball teams when it comes to hitting pitches that are 97 miles per hour or faster. And I guess one thing that I took from that, and just thinking about kind of who the Giants are, the identity of the franchise, all the way back from the 2010s and kind of who we are now, the idea of the past players that have been around, the experience, ultimately translating that to the new guys. You see Brandon Bell at the yard. You see Sean Estes doing the post game. You see ultimately people within the organization coming around to be able to see the full identity of who the Giants are. And I think that's a interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of people that care about the state of this franchise, a lot of people that really care about its success, and a lot of former players who are invested. And I think that's going to be particularly true for the last few years and the next few years, because you're coming up on, this Saturday is the 10-year reunion of the 2014 World Series championship team. And anytime you win a trophy or win a ring, people want to hang around. They have their best memories in San Francisco. People forget Hunter Pence played for the Astros. He played for the Phillies. But he had his best memories in San Francisco. It's why he wants to hang around the franchise. And so I think you mentioned something important there about people wanting to hang around and see what this team can do. Thank you for the call, Andrew. Appreciate your thoughts this evening. 415-808-KNBR is the number. Text line hopping right now, 916 Joe, CHP Joe checking in, saying Niners, sign Ayuk, go Giants. Always love hearing from our friend CHP Joe. Let's go out to our friend Scarecrow in Paso Robles. Scarecrow, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing real well. I mean, we got to win. We made it to 500. That's the good news. The bad news is we can't get anybody over from second base unless we hit a home run.
Yeah.
And
that's a very real problem for this team.
Yeah, that doesn't bode really, really well, because you get in the playoffs and you're going to win with small ball. If that's what this is, defense and pitching, you're talking about small ball, and you watch these guys line up with these long swings and hit dribblers to the shortstop with the infield in. Does anybody ever heard of shortening up the bat and taking just trying to punch it through?
Yeah, I mean, that eighth inning tonight was brutal. To watch Chapman and Schmidt and Encarnacion come up and be unable in a 4-1 ball game to just put one in the air when they needed one the most. And Chapman and Schmidt, it's hard for me to fault Chapman because he did hit the 3-run home run, but it's situational hitting that ultimately is going to define where this team gets, because I think the pitching will largely be there, Scarecrow. And you've seen the most successful Giants teams, they come through with timely hits. The most successful baseball teams come through with timely hits. And you're right about the way you win in the postseason. It's not with the long ball every game, but the Giants right now, they need to find something. So I'll take the home runs compared to last week's performance against the A's, where they didn't put up any sort of a showing against J.P. Sears on Tuesday, and they won 1-0 against Ross Stripling. I'll take the long ball tonight and worry about the situational hitting the next few days,
Yeah, well, no, everybody talks about that, and I like the sympathy of, hey, we'll take the win, we'll enjoy the heck out of it, and we'll go from there. But the point is that it's been a problem. How many guys have they left on third base, for God's sakes?
Yeah.
And you need runs. I mean, granted, we got a Cadillac for a rotation, and we got a Model T for an offense.
Oh, I can always count on you for at least one great nugget of wisdom like that. Scarecrow, thank you for the call. Appreciate your thoughts this evening. 415-808-KNBR is the number. No doubt in my mind that hitting and timely hitting is going to be a major issue for this team over the final 48 games. I'll take the home runs tonight. I liked what I saw this weekend for the most part in Cincinnati. But again, this is a team that hasn't had any sort of an identity at all so far this season. The identity has been the offense can't come through, the pitching staff can't stay healthy, and when they get a good start, one reliever blows up, and that's the reason they're under 500. Now they're back to 500, and they have to make steady improvements. They have to, as Scarecrow said, shorten up. They have to figure out a way to move guys over and get people in, because this is not an offense that can consistently win by hitting the ball out of the park. John in Calistoga, you're on Sports Phone. John, how's it going this evening?
It's going good, and this isn't, I'm trying to make anything more dramatic where drama's not needed, and I'll piggyback off this last caller, but, when you get so behind the eight ball and you almost have to be perfect down the stretch here, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the 2010, 12, and 14 teams, kind of similar dynamic that we'll probably see in the last 50 games where we have a ton of pitching. But those teams, they have the timely hitting.
Yeah.
And we can be revisionist history, or it probably wasn't all the time, but it seemed like it was more prevalent. And I think when you're trying to dig so far out of this hole, you have to go 8-2 just to get to 500, that if you don't have the kind of hitting that we've clearly exhibited that we do not have to this point, and no reason to believe that we will anytime soon, right?
Mm-hmm.
It gives you cause for concern. And then the other cause for concern for me is, like, I feel like we got a little trouble behind the plate with our two catchers.
Yeah.
I think Bailey is beat up. I think Sally's iffy at best. And that's become – I see two guys back there who one's not terribly productive, can't throw anybody out. And I think Bailey's is really looking beat up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you got to have him back there because he manages the staff really well, right? Mm-hmm. So between the non-timely hitting, the big hole you got to climb out, we have to be almost perfect. And then our catchers look a little iffy to me right now. I don't know. I just think it's a tall order.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with where you're coming from. Appreciate your phone call, John. And I think I also very much took note of the way that Patrick Bailey looked tonight, because you see someone who's given the Giants so much this season, but also you see someone who fell apart at the end of last season. You know, Patrick Bailey really struggled in August and September, and he's now, 0 for 18 on this road trip? You'd love to be able to give him a breather, but the bat is so secondary to what he offers you behind the plate. And so they did something interesting last week where they brought up Blake Sabol for a day. And I thought, I wonder if they could find some sort of a spark with Sabol compared to Casale, who's not going to give them anything offensively. Pitchers like throw into him, but he's not able to throw guys out at second. As our last caller just said, catcher's definitely a concern right now. And I think going off of what Bailey did in August and September of last year, I just don't know that there's a solution for this team after the trade deadline. And they may have to ride it out. You may have to move Bailey down in the order, and you may have to play hotter hands higher up in the order. The question for the Giants is who can get hot enough to move up in the order. That's the issue right now. Let's go to Paul on the cell phone. Paul on the cell phone, you're on Sports Phone. Paul, how are you?
Hey, Kerry, how are you? Doing
well on my end. What's on your mind tonight?
Enjoy the show. Stole a little bit of my thunder on Bailey. The only comment I was going to make was this is the second year in a row he seems to have tired in the second half.
Yep.
And he does a great job. But last year he admitted as much, and this year just the swings and the bat just doesn't seem to have as much life in it as the beginning of the year. So it's something maybe the Giants should look at. The other player I wanted to chat briefly about with you was Casey Schmidt. And I agree with you. The pitching is certainly rounding into form, and it will certainly be the backbone in this pennant race. But the Giants are also infusing a lot of youth into this lineup. There's Encarnacion, there's Fitzgerald, who's doing a great job, although he's a little sketchy at short at times. But the guy they seem to be running out there again in the midst of this pennant race is Casey Schmidt.
Yeah.
And I look at those at bats in key situations, and he just doesn't seem like he's ready for this level. He's certainly a good defensive player, but that's a guy that we've gotten pretty good production out of, and he just doesn't seem ready. And so I'm wondering, are the Giants showcasing him? Are they giving him one last shot? What's your read on Casey Schmidt?
Yeah, I think the final part of what you said there, Paul, is kind of the main component. I see two things that they're doing right now. Obviously, Tyro Estrada and Wilmer Flores are out, so they've got to have him up at the major league level. And Brett Wisely really fell off in terms of production in the month of July. And so I think some of this is a necessity, but also Casey Schmidt was a college player. He was drafted in 2020. You need to know. You're not trying to know. You need to know if he can ever help you at the major league level. And I think we're kind of getting our answer in that he's probably a fifth infielder, where, he's a second baseman, he's a shortstop, he's a third baseman. You love the positional versatility, you love the defense, but he really can only start against left-handed pitchers. And so you saw him in the lineup tonight against Patrick Corbin. The Giants have played him a lot against right-handed pitchers in recent weeks, but I think that by the end of this season, they'll have a better gauge on this. And I don't know if he'll be moving forward this offseason as a member of the 2025 plans, but I do think that the way that I look at Casey Schmidt is he's a platoon bat who gives you positional versatility on the infield. And because he came from the farm system, it's cheaper having him than having an outside option in free agency with a 32, 33-year-old veteran who's been around the block. And maybe he runs into a few balls here and there. There's good power from time to time for Casey Schmidt. But I don't know that he's a long-term solution for this team, if that makes sense to you.
It does. I think you've hit the nail on the head. And there's a lot of those types of players whose forehands run up and down I-80, whether it be Matos or Schmidt or others. And I think at some point, you've got to decide, are they going to be part of your ball club moving forward or not? They do well at Sacramento for a period. They come back down and they don't hit. And you kind of just wonder, how much longer can you really expend a great pitching staff for really minor league hitting? And so, hopefully he'll get into a little bit of a streak here, but those at bats look tough. So I appreciate you taking the call.
Yeah, thank you for the call. Appreciate you, Paul. And it brings me back to a point that I made last week about the trade deadline. I think one of the reasons the Giants weren't aggressive in looking to sell players, in looking to shop Blake Snell, is you don't see top 100 prospects traded at the deadline anymore. You don't see top 50 prospects on the move anymore. Even when stars such as Blake Snell go elsewhere, what you see are packages of 3 to 4 guys coming in return. And those 3 to 4 guys are high floor guys, but they're not ceiling guys. They're not players who you're going to insert into your lineup and one day they're going to be the 3-hitter. They're not guys who are one day going to play 150 plus games for you. They're kind of the Casey Schmidt, Thairo Estrada, Austin Slater types who, maybe they're an everyday player for some teams, but more likely they're right-handed bats who you play against left-handed pitchers. And the Giants eventually ran out with Austin Slater this year. And Thairo Estrada has fallen off this year. And so they're put into this situation where they've got a platoon again because they don't have that answer at the second base position right now. Brett Wisely looked like he might be an answer at shortstop at one point this season, but he fell off offensively. And so it's hard to justify getting him in there in the lineup on an everyday basis. 415-808-KNBR is the number. Got a few people on the line here. Let's go out to Daryl in Oakland. Daryl in Oakland, you're on Sports Phone. Daryl, how's it going tonight?
Hey, I'm doing okay. Thanks for taking my call.
Of course. What's on your mind this evening?
Okay, so, the Giants are really starting to put together a winning streak. They're 8-2 in their last 10 games. That's pretty good. I heard a lot of people talking about trading Snell and all this other stuff, and I really think that was garbage. I mean, I think that was definitely garbage. I'm sure everyone agrees. Most Giants fans, agree that it was good to keep him because he's just starting to hit his stride now, and we need these pitchers to be going strong late into the season. And you just play good. You just have good pitching. You have good defense, and you let the cards fall. Wade, people were bagging on Wade. Wade has started to step up again. Just things. I keep hearing negativity, but you got to take the positive out of this, and the Giants are definitely going in a positive direction at this point.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Daryl. Thank you for the phone call. I appreciate your thoughts. And look, I think that it's understandable for some camp of Giants fans to feel that Blake Snell should have been moved because you still look at the National League standings and you've still got to pass so many teams to get into that third wild card spot. Arizona's holding it down right now. You've got the Mets in front of you. You got the Cardinals in front of you. You got the Pirates in front of you. It's just not an easy road. And at the same time, the Giants invested more than $200 million in this team. Fans in San Francisco, around the Bay Area, all around the country who are Giants fans have high expectations for this franchise. I'm among the people who considers selling at the deadline a total failure. And I wasn't quite ready to say that this season was a failure yet. Now, if the Giants miss the playoffs, I probably will categorize it as that. Because if you miss the playoffs 3 consecutive seasons, and you miss the playoffs in a year where you signed Blake Snell, Matt Chapman, Jorge Soler, Jordan Hicks, Jung-Hoo Lee, you go out and you spend $200+ million on free agents, and you miss the playoffs again, it tells me that you're not doing something right as an organization. However, they're starting to take forward. They're starting to show that when healthy, this rotation can be among the best in baseball. The bullpen the last few days has been outstanding. They've hit some timely home runs. They haven't gotten the key base hit that everyone wants that knocks 2 guys in with 2 outs. But hey, tonight, Matt Chapman, 2 on, 2 out. He hit one out of the ballpark. That was timely for the San Francisco Giants. And so it's back and forth. And that's what a 500 team is. The challenge for the Giants is how do they get up and over 500? How do they start passing these teams in the standings? What can they do to convince you that they're headed in the right direction as an organization? And one of the people who I always love asking about that is Bob in Saratoga. Bob in Saratoga, you're on Sports Phone. Bob, how are you this evening?
I'm doing really well, thank you. I think we need a couple things to pray for. Let's say that our other Cy Young Award winner should snap into his former style. We could all have that. Help the pitching, which is much better after those 36 times I called and talked to you about we need pitching.
I love those, though. You were right.
Yeah, and by the way, how's Rocco doing on the road?
We'll answer that when the Warriors season starts, right?
Yeah. I wish the heck they would get, while we're on the Warriors, Wiggins in that trade to get that great player from Salt Lake because
Markkanen, but I don't think that's going to happen. And I know, Bob, that you called to talk about Giants. So
yeah, I did. Okay, so let me finish on the Giants. I think it's comforting to see that Conforto and Chapman are hitting. Wade is a good hitter. So we've got the guys. They just need to produce from now to the end of the year to get us enough runs to get these pitchers to win these games.
Yeah. I think, Bob, it's going to be torture, right? Like, this is going to be, if the Giants do pull off some sort of a run, it's going to look pretty tortuous because of the low-scoring offense and the outstanding starting pitching that, makes you bite a few more fingernails than you might like, huh?
Right. But if we win by one run, it's a win.
Right on there. Thank you for the call, Bob. Always appreciate hearing from you. Good stuff. 415-808-KNBR is the number. A few folks on the text line have asked, including 512 and 408, when will Tom Murphy be coming back as the Giants' backup catcher? I'm trying to do some research here. I have no idea. I've looked at Tom Murphy updates online. I've looked up for any news on Tom Murphy, and it just does not appear as if anyone has any intel on when the Giants catcher may return. He's continuing his rehab in San Francisco. He had a knee injury way back in May, early May. It was just a 10-day IL stint. Then he was transferred to the 60-day IL, and then he had to go see Neil Elatrosh, the doctor in L.A. And anytime you're seeing Neil Elatrosh, it kind of means that your season might be over. Okay, so here we go. He received a platelet-rich plasma injection, so a PRP injection, in his left knee on July 30th. So that's the latest on Tom Murphy. That tells me the Giants can't expect much more. We did have another texter point out, 747, Giants should have kept Joey Bart. Joey's playing part-time, but he has 8 home runs and a .265 batting average. And by the way, an .840 OPS for a Pirates team. It's been one of the bigger surprises in the National League this year. So Giants maybe made the wrong decision getting rid of Joey Bart when they did. I know that they went out and they signed Tom Murphy to the 2-year, $8 million contract, but he's a veteran, a little bit of an injury history. You couldn't count on him to perform more than just against left-handed starters. And Joey Bart so far this season, even though he's been limited, just 132 at-bats for the Pittsburgh Pirates, he's been a productive player for that team. And so I know that it was the end of the line, but he also did break camp on the opening day roster with the San Francisco Giants. Important to remember that before they ultimately had to send him to the Pittsburgh Pirates, or made the decision to designate him for assignment and then send him to the Pittsburgh Pirates. So 415-808-KNBR is the number. We will continue taking your calls on the San Francisco Giants on the other side. This Giants team gets back to 500 this evening, 57-57 with a 4-1 win over the Washington Nationals. If you have any thoughts on Brandon Ayuk and his situation, feel free to call today. I'm going to try and keep the Ayuk conversation to the 8 o'clock hour, but if you have any thoughts that you want to chime in with on a potential trade destination, potential trade partner, if you're in the camp that say, hey, let's explore these deals, feel free to dial us up. We got 2 more hours to go here on the Leader. Just getting rolling. Kerry Crowley with you on Sports Phone KNBR. You're listening to KNBR 104.5 680, the Sports Leader.
Now, from the O'Donnell Financial Group Sports Desk. Learn more at odfigroup.com. O'Donnell Financial Group, because planning is a process, not a product.
According to Matt Mayoko, it appears more likely than ever that the 49ers are willing to move Brandon Ayuk in a trade. Matt joins us today at 2:30. You can listen right here on KNBR, the app, YouTube, or twitch.tv/thesportsleader.
Now the pitch is swinging. There's a high drive. Deep left field. Way back there. It is gone. A home run on the second pitch of the game. Before I could even talk about how many home runs Tyler Fitzgerald has been hitting, he hits another one. His 12th home run of the year, his 137th official at bat. So he's averaging a home run about every 11 and a half at bats right now, which is rather mind-boggling. So Tyler Fitzgerald puts the Giants ahead right now. 1-0 Giants.
Just trying to slow it down. The last few days it got a little bit big, a little bit ahead of myself, but just trying to slow it down, get a good fastball to hit, and he threw it right where I wanted it. So the first pitch I was ready to swing, but it was on the outside corner, and then he just kind of laid one up there from the second pitch. So I was ready to go. I have some success off that guy in the past, so see him pretty well, but just ready to get my swing off.
The nighttime is the right time for Sports Phone KNBR. Let's go on the sports leader. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
It's really amazing when you consider all the different plans the Giants had at the shortstop position for 2024. I mean, go back to November of last year when Farhan Zaidi said at the general manager meetings that Marco Luciano could be the guy. He has the track to win the everyday shortstop job. You come into spring training, Luciano's not it. So they signed Nick Ahmed. Nick Ahmed, the veteran, he plays it, but, you know, he probably was never going to end the season as the starting shortstop for the San Francisco Giants. Some fans were clamoring for Brandon Crawford to return. He ultimately signs with the St. Louis Cardinals. Giants kind of shut the door on that opportunity. There were some folks in the organization who wanted to see Casey Schmidt get the shot at shortstop because of his glove, because of his arm, and because of his versatility around the infield. Very few people I ever heard utter Tyler Fitzgerald's the guy, and yet 11 home runs in 17 games gives him 12 on the season. He is, by the way, now tied Jorge Soler in home runs this year for the San Francisco Giants. Didn't anticipate that coming. The fourth shortstop to ever homer 11 times in 17 games, joining the likes of Alex Rodriguez, Troy Tulowitzki, and Trey Turner. Yep, Tyler Fitzgerald. Put them in the same category. 415-808-KNBR is the number. Your thoughts on the San Francisco Giants tonight's 4-1 win that brought them back to 500. Your thoughts on the shortstop of the present. Can he be the shortstop of the future? Tyler Fitzgerald for this Giants ball club. We're headed out to Gary in San Ramon. Gary in San Ramon, you're on Sports Phone. Gary, how are you this evening?
Good, Kerry. Yeah, just, man, that's an amazing story with Tyler. He's kind of a tall kid, isn't he? What, about 6'3"?
He really is, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize he was that tall, and I guess in the Alex Rodriguez mode at shortstop, being of that height.
Yeah. Hey, it works. I mean, he doesn't play the best shortstop of all time, but when you hit 11 home runs in 17 games, you're going to be on the diamond, and I like his athleticism too.
Nice. He's a good kid, and in the words of Mike Krukow, man, just stay hot, Matt, and stay hot, Tyler, you know? So anyway.
Exactly.
The runners in scoring positions remains a bugaboo, Kerry, and I think we beat that drum to death, but it is a problem. And they couldn't add on tonight. What were they, 3 for 23? John said this series or the last 23 at bat. So I don't know. I have a solution for that. I think the issue from the start has been the station to station baseball that we tend to play, and more athleticism. You know, Farhan has kind of dropped the ball as far as initially getting us more athletic, but Tyler's some of the kids he's coming up are a little more athletic, so there we go. But my concern going forward with the pitching is that I don't think you can count on Birdsong and maybe not so much Harrison, especially with that September schedule they got. And I was totally against the Cobb move. What do you think?
Yeah, I was also against the Cobb move for a few reasons, Gary, and you spelled it out perfectly in saying it's difficult to count on Hayden Birdsong, who's never pitched in the month of September. It's difficult to count on Kyle Harrison, who's going through his first major league season right now in the month of September. But also, this is a Giants team that how many times this season has it actually had 5 starters make consecutive starts? Even when their guys have been healthy, they've opted for a bullpen game from time to time. Blake Snell doesn't go 9 innings traditionally, as we know. Robbie Ray's coming off of Tommy John surgery. Logan Webb's already shouldering the biggest load in Major League Baseball that any starter has had over the last 2 seasons. I would have liked to have seen them get creative, and instead of working with Alex Cobb, in a trade. I would have liked to see them piggyback Birdsong and Harrison in some days. I would have liked to have seen them bring Cobb into the rotation. I would have liked to have seen them get creative with their options instead of just make a pure salary dump, because that's what it was. And I think this franchise is better than pure salary dumps.
Yeah, we need to compete for something other than the third wild card. Tradition would tell you that, Kerry. So, yeah, it's what is it, the 8th try now to get to 500? So hopefully we can stay there.
Exactly. The 8th time's the charm. So, Gary, good call. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. I do think it was 7 consecutive times where the Giants had come within a game of 500 over the last 2+ months where they'd lost that game. And so they finally get there tonight. It was June 1st, the last time the Giants were sitting at 500 entering a ball game, and they will do so again on Tuesday, August 6th, when they take on the Washington Nationals. Hayden Birdsong returning to this rotation. A little bit of a youth movement for this Giants team. We're definitely going to touch on that during tonight's show. But right now I want to head out to Bob in Santa Cruz. Bob in Santa Cruz, you're on Sports Phone. How's it going, Bob?
Hey, it's actually Bub. How are you tonight?
Oh, doing well. Doing well. Apologies on that end. My screen's a little far from me right now. Tells me I need to get glasses. How's it going tonight?
Oh, pretty good. I'm calling in. Make this make sense for me, Kerry. We got Luciano at DH, who was brought in to up in spring training to potentially play for the shortstop position. The franchise views him as talented enough in the infield to be an infield guy, and he's hitting well in Sacramento. And now he's up hitting not very well on the big league team and not playing in the field. And we have Matos, who hit well in the bigs, then he slumped a little bit. But Matos is clearly not going to be a star center fielder with Jung-Hoo Lee coming back and with what Ramos is doing. So I'm just confused as to why we would bring Luciano up to DH, get no reps in the infield or fielding, and leave someone like Matos down in the minor leagues who has proven he can bat in the big league level. And when I look at his lineup, our hole is gaping at the DH level. I mean, we really don't have a DH.
Yeah.
We let Soler go, and I have some thoughts on the future of it, but I really don't understand the thinking that the Giants are doing right now.
Yeah, I'll try and break it down, because I thought, if given a preference, I would have called up Luciano to DH. I really believe that Matos had the week of his life, and other than that, he was bound to regress to what he is, and I don't think you're going to see much pop from him at the major league level. I think he's probably a 4th or 5th outfielder at the major league level, and I don't think he's ever been really viewed favorably by this Giants front office. I think that the previous front office, the one led by Bobby Evans and John Barr, was the one that brought him into the organization. And, the amateur scouting process, he signed at 16, 17 years old. And so they were hoping that they'd have a high contact guy. But I don't think they see Matos as a high ceiling guy at the major league level. Whereas Luciano, I think they see as having a much higher ceiling, because you look at his numbers at AAA, they were better than Matos at AAA. I don't think you said the Giants view Luciano as a shortstop. I think they viewed him as a shortstop. I don't think they do anymore. Right. And furthermore, I think that they're using this stretch to evaluate whether Luciano is part of the future or if he can be the centerpiece of a trade package this offseason, because it would not shock me at all if the Giants went out this offseason, Bug, and traded Marco Luciano as part of a package to get a bigger star to San Francisco.
Now, I agree with you there, but wouldn't it be better if we didn't know how he hit in the major league for a trade package if he was just a top prospect? And
other teams will want to see it.
Okay.
I totally get the logic, but other teams have seen him hit at AAA. They want to see him do it at the big league level. He's had enough at bats there to convince other scouts, evaluators, hey, let's give him a look. Let's see. And if he really does show some potential, then we'll take the bite. He's viewed far more favorably around the industry by 29 other teams in a trade package than a Matos would be right now. So that's why I think it's part of the calculation.
And then do you see them keeping him, or do you think they're gearing up for a trade?
Well, that's a really difficult question to answer, because Tyler Fitzgerald has complicated this a little bit for the Giants. And I don't think that, I don't think the Giants are comfortable with putting Luciano anywhere defensively. And so not. Trading Jorge Soler gave them the opportunity to say, maybe Luciano can be our DH moving forward. Maybe we enter 2025 with Luciano as the DH. And I think that that's one option, but they also know that fans expect a star in San Francisco. And dating back well beyond Farhan Zaidi's tenure, there has not been free agents who've wanted to sign with the San Francisco Giants. This goes back before Oracle Park opened. This goes back to the Candlestick days. Folks just don't want to sign in free agency with the Giants because it's a difficult area to hit home runs. It always has been, historically has been a difficult place for offensive players and power hitters to come and thrive. Barry Bonds, of course, was the great outlier, but they had the advantage of him being the hometown kid. And so I think that they want to see if they can develop someone from within their own system. Luciano might be that guy. And if not, they want to trade him and bring in that guy via trade, because getting someone via trade might actually be easier than signing a free agent at this point, you know?
Yeah, I got you there. I mean, I think without signing the free agent thing, I agree. I'm hoping that the pitching rotation highlights that all we need is a bat, and some bat would be willing to come here saying, look at this great pitching. If I come in, we're a playoff team, no brainer. So that's my thought with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right.
Thank you. Thanks for clearing that up. That makes sense.
Good stuff. Thank you for the call, Bug. Appreciate your thoughts this evening. And thank you for the good questions. Really good questions on the Luciano versus Matos debate and why the Giants are rolling with Luciano as their designated hitter right now, even though, you know, they did see the flash that Luis Matos gave them when he was the National League Player of the Week earlier this season. I just think that over the course of 162 games, over the course of the next 5 seasons, if you're projecting out, 9 people out of 10 in the baseball industry would probably tell you that Marco Luciano will hit better over the next 162 and over the next 5 years than Luis Matos will. It has always been that way throughout their minor league careers. Luciano's been the top prospect. Matos has been more on the fringes. He doesn't produce big exit velocities. He makes a lot of contact, but also he'll chase pitches outside the strike zone. Luciano has honed his strike zone a little bit more this year at AAA Sacramento, and I think that he's got the much higher ceiling. And in baseball, ceiling is everything for a team looking to add an impactful piece in a trade if they're parting with an impactful piece in a trade. And so it's a difficult dilemma for the Giants to sort out, and it's one that, hey, maybe we continue to discuss in the coming days, because we don't have to discuss Marco Luciano at shortstop. Tyler Fitzgerald's holding the job down. Tyler Fitzgerald has done a sensational job as the offensive performer at the shortstop position that the Giants have wanted this year. And yes, it's only been half of a month, but it has been one of the hottest stretches you'll ever see from a shortstop. He's doing things that we have not seen in a long, long time, and that is welcome for a Giants team that has struggled to hit with runners in scoring position, struggled to hit for pop this year. And I know that their numbers league-wide, league average, are kind of in the middle, but I think we can all tell that it is difficult to project where they're going to get their offense from on a daily basis. There's not 1, 2, or 3 super consistent players, and very quickly, Tyler Fitzgerald has become one of those extremely consistent players for the San Francisco Giants. When we come back, a little bit more on the Giants. Jack Loader going to join me around 7:40, 7:45 this evening, and we will talk Giants. We will talk 49ers. We'll talk all things Bay Area sports with our friend from the KNBR Digital Department. You're listening to KNBR 104.5, 680, the sports leader.
nothing goes on forever like this, but yes, I think he can be a productive big league hitter, and he's settling in at shortstop too. He's a lot calmer in his plays, and the speed of the runner now. He's got his internal clocks better. He's just playing with a lot of confidence. Like I said, there's a ton of ability there. So, I mean, I don't know if he's going to go to the Hall of Fame if he continues on this pace, but we like what we see. And after a little bit of a spurt where he wasn't swinging great, maybe for 4 or 5 games or so, he picked it up again, and that's what you want to see.
We want your reaction, so give us a ring or blow up the text line at 415-808-KNBR. This is Sports Phone KNBR, streaming live at twitch.tv/The Sports Leader.
All right, we are back here on Sports Phone KNBR. Kerry Crowley hanging with you until 9 o'clock. Giants take it 4-1 over the Washington Nationals this evening. They're back to 500, 57-57. That was Giants manager Bob Melvin breaking down Tyler Fitzgerald. And I do appreciate, and acknowledge what he said there, that there was a brief stretch where Tyler Fitzgerald, for as hot as he's been over the last few weeks, kind of went cold. He went 3 for 20 over a 5-game slate from July 27th when the Giants had their doubleheader against the Colorado Rockies into July 31st when the Giants won 1-0 over the Oakland A's. Just 3 for 20, 8 strikeouts during that stretch. And he's bookended that with 3 hit performances on both sides. And he did, of course, have a home run against the Colorado Rockies in that 5-0 win on July 27th, one of 2 games the Giants picked up against the Rockies that day. So he had 1 home run during that rough stretch, but he's come out of this with a home run against Cincinnati on Friday, a home run against Cincinnati on Sunday, and another home run against Washington tonight, leading off against Patrick Corbin. About 30 seconds into Corbin's start, Tyler Fitzgerald took him deep into left field stands. And one of the things that I really appreciate about watching Tyler Fitzgerald at this point in the season is I think that the great players are able to grind through 162. The great players, the Hall of Famers, the All-Stars, they make 162 look easier than the platoon guys and the average starters and maybe the below-average starters who are still run out there far more than they should be just because there's 30 major league teams and you got to field a ball club every night. But what you see a lot of in August and September, and a number of Giants players aren't immune to this, is fatigue. You see guys start to break down. You see swings that maybe you didn't see in the months of May and June. You see plays that should be made in the field where a guy's a step too slow. And you really see the grind of the 162-game season show up in August and September. And what I've loved watching about Tyler Fitzgerald over the last 3 weeks is, well, obviously he wasn't hampered by this grind. He wasn't in the big leagues for a lot of the first half of the season. Yes, he was down at AAA Sacramento, but we're seeing someone who truly looks like he's in his prime right now, out there from an athletic standpoint. And when he turns on a pitch, he gets a hold of one. Like these home runs that Tyler Fitzgerald has hit, they're not just clearing the left field bleachers. They're going deep into the left field bleachers. You're talking about someone who is really at his game or playing at the highest level of his game right now. And it's not something you always see in the month of August with a young player, because even those AAA games, they take a toll on guys. Those are long games, and oftentimes they end with position players pitching. Those AAA rosters are basically existing to serve the big leagues. Guys shuttle back and forth every day. Fitzgerald was one of those guys earlier this season going back and forth from AAA to the majors, but he's established himself. The Giants will continue to look at him over the final 48 at the shortstop position. It's worth riding out any rough patches like the one that Fitzgerald had last week and just sticking with him because the Giants have seen him at his best over a 3-week stint, and they know what he is capable of at the big league level, and that is capable of producing a lot of pop, capable of providing some excitement on the base pass, an area where I still think he can make a lot of improvement, and still capable of playing a decent shortstop, an area where I think if he focuses on that position this offseason, he will have the opportunity to get better and improve. So as the Giants win 4-1 today, they had 9 hits, no errors. The Nationals held to 6 hits, no errors in this ballgame. Logan Webb goes back up above 500 on his own season. He's now 9-8 after picking up that shutout win over the Oakland A's on Wednesday of last week. A 3.42 ERA for the Giants all-star starter. Patrick Corbin dropped to 2-12 on the season, a 5.88 ERA. And the Giants could have made an even greater dent in that if Michael Conforto had not hit into a 1-6-3 double play in the 5th inning when the Giants had Corbin on the ropes. Camilo Doval gets save number 21 this evening. And so let's take a look at scores around Major League Baseball right now. Very light slate because it's Monday, and you get a lot of off days on Monday for teams around the league. Big travel day. Top of the 9th inning in Texas, interdivision matchup between the Astros and the Rangers. It's 2-2 in that ball game. The Astros 57-54, fighting at or near the top of the AL West right now. The Rangers 6 games under 500. Kirby Yates on the mound for Bruce Bochy's ball club. Jose Altuve at the plate for the Houston Astros. Bottom of the 8th inning at Kauffman Stadium in Kansas City, where the Boston Red Sox hold a 9-5 advantage over the Kansas City Royals. The Red Sox 8 games over 500 right now. Giants saw them back in early May at Fenway Park. And the Royals 63-50 right now. Giants will see them in the month of September. They've also got the Orioles in the month of September, so don't look too far ahead on this upcoming slate for the San Francisco Giants because things do get much tougher. We'll touch on that later on this evening as well. Top of the 4th inning out at the Coliseum in Oakland, where the A's are trying to deal the Chicago White Sox their 21st consecutive loss. J.P. Sears, who shut out the Giants over 7 strong innings last week at Oracle Park, he's on the mound for Oakland right now. It's a 1-0 ball game in the top of the 4th at the Coliseum. Middle of the 2nd down in Los Angeles, matchup of 2 division leaders right now as the Phillies are in town taking on the Dodgers. Dodgers getting a little bit healthier right now as they've hit somewhat of a rough patch this season. Hard to call any stretch a rough patch for the Dodgers, but they did finish the month of July under 500 in the month. Aaron Nola on the mound for the Dodgers this evening, for the Phillies this evening as they hold a 2-0 advantage over the Los Angeles Dodgers. Will Smith at the plate in that one. Final in St. Louis tonight, where the Mets picked up a 6-0 victory over the St. Louis Cardinals. 2 teams, the Giants trying to pass in the wild card standings. Sean Manaea up to 8-4 right now, a 3.30 ERA for the New York Mets. He's had a really nice season after, of course, leaving the Giants in free agency last year. 6-0, the Mets win that one. Cardinals held to 6 hits in that ball game. A wild one at Progressive Field this evening between the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Cleveland Guardians. And another result that did not go the Giants' way. The Diamondbacks clawed back in that one, back and forth ball game. They end up winning 7-6 over the Guardians. The Guardians' outstanding closer, Emmanuel Clase, takes the loss in that ball game. He has a .69 ERA. The best closer in baseball for my money on the best team in baseball. The Guardians lead all major league clubs with 67 wins right now. 2 other finals to tell you about. The Miami Marlins fall 10-3 to the Cincinnati Reds tonight. The Reds, led by Nick Martinez, their starter, they pick up win number 54. The Marlins fall to 42-71. And the other ball game to tell you about this evening, the Minnesota Twins take it 3-0 over the Chicago Cubs. The Twins 15 games over 500 in that AL Central, and yet it's still quite a battle in that division right now. Everyone has taken advantage of beating up on the White Sox this season. The Cubs now 5 games under 500 as Kyle Hendricks falls to 3-10, 6.60 ERA. Remember when Kyle Hendricks shut down the Giants this season? Yeah, not the best day of the year for the San Francisco ball club. So the Giants back in action tomorrow against the Washington Nationals. Hayden Birdsong rejoining this roster. He will take them out. And on the other side, we'll talk Giants baseball. We'll talk 49ers football with our man, Jack Loader of the KNBR Digital Department. Looking forward to our weekly conversation with Jack. Then 49ers in the 8 o'clock hour. You're listening to KNBR 104.5 680, the sports leader.
.353 lifetime average with 5 homers in 35 at-bats. And there's a high drive. Deep down the left field line. Speaking of home runs, goodbye. High up into the bleachers, almost to the back row, down the line. And that is a 3-run homer. Matt Chapman makes it a 4-0 Giants lead.
Dub Nation, dial the digits and dive in. 415-808-KNBR. Sports Phone KNBR continues right here and on the all-new KNBR app.
All right, we are back here on Sports Phone KNBR. Kerry Crowley rolling with you until 9 o'clock this evening. Hanging out, talking some San Francisco Giants baseball, winners of a 4-1 ball game over the Washington Nationals this evening, and some San Francisco 49ers football. And here to do that, our friend Jack Loader of the KNBR digital team. Jack, how's it going this evening?
Great, Kerry. Thanks for having me on. We got some good Giants developments, Niners in camp. I think my optimism might finally be paying off.
Exactly. Always optimistic on these KNBR airwaves. The young Jack Loader. Let's start off with the way that the Giants start off tonight's ball game. Tyler Fitzgerald homers for the 11th time in 17 games. And, you know, Jack, earlier this season, Luis Matos had the week of his life. He won National League Player of the Week award. He was outstanding. He looked like the best player in baseball, looked like a future centerpiece of this Giants ball club. And then he went cold. And then he went cold at AAA Sacramento, and he hasn't really been heard from much the rest of the season. Tyler Fitzgerald has now sustained this hot streak a lot longer than Matos had. How much are you buying this recent stretch of baseball? Not in terms of, hey, this is who Tyler Fitzgerald is, but, hey, he might be able to be an everyday player for this ball club moving forward.
Yeah, I'm buying it big. And if you had told me back then, I think it was in May, that Luis Matos' week he had was not going to be the best week by a Giants rookie this season, I would have called you crazy. But that's just what the reality of what Tyler Fitzgerald has been doing. Every year or so, it seems like there's a rookie that spends a month, maybe less, ripping Major League Baseball apart. You know, Trevor Story's start comes to mind. Yermin Mercedes with the White Sox a few years ago. And I just feel like that player has never been a Giant. Now, Posey and Lincecum had more sustained rookie dominance, but it was never that 2-3 week stretch that really took the MLB by storm. And Tyler Fitzgerald is absolutely that player. I mean, he's followed up his NL Rookie of the Month July with an even more dominant first week of August. I find myself like planning my day around his at-bats. He's a treat to watch right now, and I'm just riding the wave. I think as long as he keeps this up, or he keeps up anything in that galaxy, he's going to be in the lineup.
Yeah, gosh, really great comparisons to what we saw when Trevor Story first came up for the Rockies in the Yermin Mercedes era, a forever Giant and Yermin Mercedes, who made a cameo on Farhan Zaidi's one of the Giants rosters a few years ago, playing some left field for this ball club. But I think that Fitzgerald has proven so far that it's worth sticking with him at the shortstop position over the final 48 games. See what you have in him and move forward. The other infielder playing on his right or left is Matt Chapman right now over at third base. And the way that Chapman has performed of late has been really critical to helping the Giants get back to 500, Jack. He hits the home run tonight in a big spot against Patrick Corbin, 2 on, 2 out. His WAR is above 5 on the season right now. This is kind of what the Giants thought they'd be getting when they signed Matt Chapman, albeit it took him a while to get here.
Yeah, it's almost like he and Tyler Fitzgerald are kind of doing an anything you can do, I can do better battle right now, which I'm absolutely fine with, and I'm sure Giants fans feel the same way. And with Chapman, I think a lot of people who align themselves with this team were a little quick to declare Chapman disappointing early in the season, and I was one of them. I'll admit it. I'll be the first one signing an apology for him, but I think that cynicism was somewhat justified given the way a lot of Farhan's other signings have played out and how awful of a beginning it was for Soler and Snell. It was kind of easy to lump Chapman into that and call this free agent class another disappointment, but this resurgence has really been a paradigm shift to what we saw early in the year from Chapman. Giants fans could have only hoped they'd be getting the best version of like Toronto Blue Jays Matt Chapman, but the last 6 weeks and change has more closely resembled the A's prime of Matt Chapman, which if you told me that a few months ago, I would have been over the moon. So if he keeps homering once a game and making these weekly jaw-dropping plays at third base, I'm reminded of that late May series in New York where he had that incredible play to end that ball game. He's just such a force multiplier for this team right now, and really putting himself as a front runner to be this team's MVP if you had to vote at the end of the season.
Yeah, very well said, and hard to argue at that point. Over 162, he very well could be this team's MVP. Talking with Jack Loader right now on the UMA guest line, part of our great KNBR digital department. And Jack, the other interesting thing that struck me about tonight's ball game is We've talked about this. The Giants have really removed their margin for error. They're going to be playing a lot of close games down the stretch, and they're going to have to win a lot of close games to make this a magical August and September. But Camilo Doval showed form tonight that we have not seen in a long time. He'd had an 8-day rest, but man, this was the Camilo that we anticipated coming into this season.
Absolutely. He looked tonight exactly like he has for 2022 and 2023, even some of 2021. That was a dominant fastball and a wipeout slider. And it's amazing what 8 days will do for a guy's arm, right? He hasn't pitched since last Sunday because the Giants have either won big or they've had incredibly dominant starts from their starting pitchers, which I'm sure we'll touch on more throughout here. But like a number of players on this team, Doval has kind of been a piece that just hasn't quite been all there. In some ways, he's been one of the more disappointing players, but better late than never that he come on and look like his 2022 and 2023 self. If he can turn a corner and look like he did tonight for the rest of the way, the Giants would be in business again at the back end of that bullpen. It was really nice to see his stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. That slider was so sharp in the ninth inning, got a lot of swing and misses. It started in the zone, darted out of the zone, and he was still fooling hitters. That's when you know that pitch is on. It's got that late break from Camilo Doval. So, Jack, it was a week ago that Farhan Zaidi, right after the trade deadline, said, hey, we think we have potentially the best rotation in Major League Baseball. And so far, this group's delivered. Logan Webb went out on Wednesday evening against the Oakland A's and shut them out when the Giants badly needed to win. Blake Snell comes up with the no-hitter on Saturday or on Friday evening against the Cincinnati Reds. Logan Webb comes back tonight. Look, he doesn't get a quality start, but he does go 5 2/3 very solid innings and leaves the game with the lead. He picks up his 9th win of the season. This is a group led by two aces that's looking like, at least for now, it can make things interesting.
Exactly. I want to avoid being too reactionary here because I don't think it's time to crown Farhan, a week after we spent some time kind of kicking dirt on him, but he was much maligned last week at the deadline for that take, and then his aces have really showed that that's much of the case. And Robbie Ray that night, that Tuesday night, right after the deadline, he got knocked around by the A's, and everyone even kind of piled on more onto Farhan. But don't get me wrong, he deserves a ton of criticism, but his take has really aged quite nicely in the short term. And that next step is the Giants actually building on this positive momentum, continuing to ride that pitching, staying above 500 for an extended period of time, hold a playoff spot as we make the turn in September, whether or not you kind of keep it throughout that month, but just be in that position. Don't be chasing so much. And I think if Webb, Snell, and Robbie Ray can look really good and you get supplemented by the Harrison and Birdsong part of the staff, then Farhan's got every right to make the claim he did.
Yeah, very well said. So let's get to this. Blake Snell throws the no-hitter on Friday evening in Cincinnati. It's been a very up and down, interesting season for him. Hayden Birdsong coming back tomorrow, so the Giants giving Blake Snell an extra day of rest. But you've got an anecdote on Snell's no-hitter that I know that you wanted to share.
Yeah, so Snell, you said it's been up and down, but for the last month or so, it's been straight up. I want to give his credit where it's due. This guy has been absolutely dominant, and that's why this past Friday, I thought it was appointment television to be in front of the TV. I had some people over at my apartment. We were getting ready to go out. Ubers were on the way in the 7th and 8th inning, and I said, I can't leave this spot. I'm a very superstitious baseball guy. I missed the first 2 Ubers. I had to call one for myself later on because I would not leave that couch with me and a couple other buddies. So we saw it through. We were with Blake Snell the whole way, and I didn't leave my place and I kind of hit the town until that last out was in Yaz's glove, which I thought it was my duty. But what an awesome night to be a Giants fan.
Living the dream in the city of San Francisco, the young Jack Loader. Love that stuff. Hey, let's get to the business of the moment right now. We've talked plenty of Giants baseball. Pretty much the rest of the way, it's going to be 49ers here on KNBR because Matt Mayoko of NBC Sports Bay Area, who joins us frequently as the KNBR insider here, he just tweeted out that Brandon Ayuk and the 49ers have got the potential, let me just read this. The 49ers have the framework of deals that would send Brandon Ayuk to the Cleveland Browns and the New England Patriots, and it's now time for Brandon Ayuk to review his options. What say you about this breaking news?
I read that a number of minutes ago right before I came on, and it really does seem like the ball is in Brandon Ayuk's court. Now, whether or not Ayuk is entirely comfortable with the ball being in his court, I think is a little bit doubtful on my end. When Mayoko was on with Tolbert and Copes a number of hours ago, he was pretty non-committal to the idea that Ayuk actually wanted out of San Francisco when he requested that trade. And it seems like It's a little bit of a be careful what you wish for situation here, maybe for Ayuk, because now it's real. He's going to have the opportunity to leave the 49ers, and the grass is not always greener. I'm not saying that necessarily he can't prosper elsewhere because he's an incredible player, and I think he would. But there's not much I can really add to this saga with much nuance besides like maybe relatability. And this whole saga is soured like milk in the sun for Niners fans. It's an ugly back and forth that seems to be being misplayed by Ayuk more so than it's been mishandled by the front office. What the Niners really want to avoid now is the situation getting uglier as kickoff approaches, I think. And the worst-case scenario is no longer losing Ayuk. It's the negotiation and subsequent discourse and fallout negatively affecting this team. So pay him, trade him, but do it fast and not at the expense of this current window. If they do let him go, they better be getting pieces back that help this 2024 team. I don't want to hear as much about draft capital because this is the epitome of a win-now team. And the way this has unfolded has been surprising, but I think there's no doubt now, especially with this Mayoko report, the ball's in Ayuk's court, and whether or not he's going to be a 49er this year is kind of up to him.
Yeah, it really does seem like it's up to him. And Brandon Ayuk was the one who requested the trade before training camp. The 49ers have now gone through and come up with the framework for deals with the Cleveland Browns and the New England Patriots, as Matt Mayoko just reported. And I think it's an interesting situation, Jack, because it seems to me, in looking at these depth charts and these rosters, that if you're the San Francisco 49ers, gosh, you would sure prefer for Brandon Ayuk to choose the Cleveland Browns, assuming that Amari Cooper would be in that deal, because there's really no equivalent option on the New England Patriots. I heard, Mayoko mention Kendrick Bourne as a possibility, but Cooper went over 1,200 yards last year, and that, to me, is the way the 49ers could replace his production while still maintaining the ability to have a top-flight offense next year.
Yeah, as much as I'm a fan of forever 49er Kendrick Bourne, I don't think you can too much for equating to him and Amari Cooper. So I think the Browns would be a better option. I'm sure the Niners still have a lot of leverage. I'm sure that they're going to have a lot of say in what the return is. So whatever happens with Ayuk, like I said, let's expedite it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the other thing. And then the compounding factor here is I do think the 49ers want to get a deal done with Trent Williams. And the longer you go, the longer you look at potentially Jalen Moore as your left tackle, the longer you feel like something has to give there. And I know that there's still more than a month until kickoff when the 49ers host the New York Jets on Monday Night Football. But, Jack, I think that the 49ers envision this season including a healthy dose of Trent Williams to the left tackle position. And when I say that, I mean all 17 games, and they can't let that linger any longer. So they're probably putting a little bit of pressure on Ayuk with these trades now being out there.
Exactly. A shiver went down my spine, frankly, when you said Jalen Moore at left tackle, because not even a slight to him, just the fact that the drop-off from the greatest to ever play that position would be. Trent Williams not playing every snap for the Niners at left tackle, barring injury, wasn't even a possibility in my mind. So I think they're addressing that with urgency, and I think maybe the urgency with which they are addressing that is kind of telling to Ayuk and maybe showing him that, hey, they didn't do this with me, or that they should have, but people's emotions get involved and things can get ugly. So maybe the fact that the Trent Williams holdout has kind of taken more center stage, it's been the shinier new toy, is kind of playing with Ayuk's head too, but definitely get 71 paid. There's no doubt in my mind they'll do that.
Jack Loader of the KNBR Digital Department, always great when you join us here on Sports Phone. Always appreciate your time. Thank you so much for your perspective this evening, and look forward to doing this again real soon.
Yep, let's talk soon, Gary. Thanks.
All right. He is Jack Loader. I am Kerry Crowley. This is Sports Phone KNBR, folks. If you've got any thoughts on Brandon Ayuk and this latest update from Matt Mayoko, please do dial in. 415-808-KNBR is the number. Again, Mayoko reporting that the 49ers have agreed to the framework of a trade that would send Brandon Ayuk to either A, the Cleveland Browns, or B, the New England Patriots. He's got both trades on the table, and now it's up to Ayuk to determine if he wants to go and sign a long-term contract extension with either of those teams. Let me tell you, I imagine the money is not all that different from what the San Francisco 49ers are offering right now. You have to imagine the 49ers might be in that 28 to 29 average annual value range in terms of their contract offer. Maybe it's as low as 26 or 27, but again, if the Browns and the Patriots are looking at Ayuk and saying, we think he's a $30 million a year player annually, Is it worth it for Ayuk to go to a situation where he wouldn't have the same quarterback, where he wouldn't have the same offensive system, and where he would be playing in much colder weather than what he's got in San Francisco, which is in this year, in the middle of his prime, an opportunity to win a Super Bowl with this club? So a fascinating dynamic, and I do think that the 49ers, by having this information out there, they may want Brandon Ayuk to make an immediate decision on this, and we will see if Ayuk ultimately decides to go through with this trade and go through with that initial request, or meet the 49ers where they are with their contract, sign that extension in San Francisco, and stay with the 49ers for the foreseeable future. We are finally inching closer, it feels like, to a resolution on this front. This is something that has been a long time coming, and of course, I am not in favor of the 49ers trading Brandon Ayuk. I have said this from the start. I don't think that the 49ers will be doing themselves, and especially Brock Purdy, a service by trading Brandon Ayuk elsewhere, but I do think that this is something that when he's put in the trade request and you've gone through weeks of practice and you understand where your offense is, you simply have to evaluate the options if you are not willing to budge. So 415-808 KNBR is the number. Let's go out to our first caller here on the Ayuk subject. We're headed out very quickly to Brett in the East Bay. Brett in the East Bay right on the line. How are you, Brett?
I'm well. How you doing?
Doing well on mine. What's on your mind tonight, Brett?
Well, I'm a Cowboys fan, and you do not want to trade for Amari Cooper. As good as he is, he's not a dog. There's a reason why they got rid of him. They looked at the film at the end of those playoff runs and went, nope, he wasn't there. So I would not go after Amari Cooper as good as his numbers are.
Let's break that down a little bit. Yeah. I'm curious because 7 seasons over 1,000 yards. Every time I've turned on my TV over the last few years, I've seen Amari Cooper making big plays. But I know that a lot of those big plays happen in a Cowboys uniform. Why is there the animosity from you?
Well, it's just that I think he's a terrific player too. But when it came down to crunch time, he's not making the block. And the kind of player that the 49ers want, I don't think Amari Cooper is that guy.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I'll have to turn on the tape tomorrow for sure if this is still lingering. Brett, thank you for the phone call. Appreciate your thoughts. You look at Amari Cooper and his stats with the Cleveland Browns over each of the last 2 seasons, 1,160 yards back in 2022. In 2023, 1,250 yards and 72 catches last year. So numbers that are very similar to what Brandon Ayuk put up in a 49ers uniform. Again, Matt Mayoko of NBC Sports Bay Area reporting that the 49ers have agreed to the framework of deals with the New England Patriots and the Cleveland Browns for Brandon Ayuk now. It's now in the hands of Ayuk and his agent to see if he can work out a long-term contract with one of those 2 teams, and the 49ers will continue to be a part of these discussions. Mayoko also saying that the Commanders removed themselves from trade talks and the Steelers weren't willing to meet the 49ers trade demands. So the 49ers moving forward with both the Browns and the Patriots at this juncture. More on Brandon Ayuk and this saga on the other side. I am Kerry Crowley. You're listening to Sports Zone KNBR. KNBR rolling until 9 o'clock here on the Sports Leader.
This is Sports Phone KNBR. Dial the digits or send us a text at 415-808-KNBR. We're streaming on YouTube all damn day at KNBR 1045.
All right, we are back here on Sports Phone KNBR. Kerry Crowley until 9 o'clock talking 49ers for the next 30-ish or so minutes before we wrap up this evening and talking about the big news that Matt Mayoko just reported. 49ers insider for NBC Sports Bay Area said that the 49ers have a framework of a deal with both the Cleveland Browns and the New England Patriots, have turned over that framework to Brandon Ayuk, and he and his agent can negotiate a potential contract extension with both of those teams and give the 49ers the green light if they want to trade him. Now, it remains to be seen if Ayuk will enjoy and agree to the contract offers that the Browns would make and the New England Patriots would make. If he would prefer to play on those contracts, then he would prefer to play in San Francisco alongside Brock Purdy and a 49ers team that has a legitimate opportunity to win a Super Bowl here. But 808 KNBR is the number. Give us your thoughts. I've got plenty of mine. Let's head out to Arthur down in L.A. Arthur down in L.A., you're on Sports Phone. Arthur, how's it going this evening?
Pretty good, Kerry. How's it going for you?
Oh, going well on my end. What's on your mind tonight, Arthur?
I just had 2 quick points, one about the Giants and a question about the 49ers. About selling, you don't want to get into a selling mode because look what Nick Ahmed did when he was with these bums down here against the Giants.
Yes.
And I don't want to praise them too much, Kerry. Yeah, everybody down here. I don't see many people in Dodger uniforms, the Dodger memorabilia like I used to. So these are some bandwagon fans down here in L.A. So, and
all right.
And about the 49ers, Kerry.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to, where's Jimmy Garoppolo at?
Jimmy Garoppolo's down in Los Angeles with the Rams right now, second or third string quarterback for them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I might head to that game down at SoFi Stadium on the next month on the 22nd, the 49ers and Rams down here at SoFi.
Yeah, there you go. All right.
Might run for John Dickinson.
There you go. Hopefully you do. Thank you for the call, Arthur. Appreciate your time and thoughts this evening. Let's get into the mechanics of this potential Brandon Ayuk deal. I think that it very much would benefit the 49ers if Ayuk took the Browns trade. And I say that not knowing what either team is offering right now. I say this under the assumption, as Mary Kay Cabot of Cleveland.com has reported, that Amari Cooper would be in the trade with Brandon Ayuk and the Cleveland Browns. Not knowing what the New England Patriots would offer, not knowing what the draft compensation is like on either side. But I say that because the 49ers are not building for 2025 and beyond. The 49ers are trying to win in 2024. And not getting a deal done with Brandon Ayuk is a major disappointment. They still can. Ayuk could still look at the Browns offer. He could still look at the Patriots offer and say, you know what? It might make sense for me to take a little bit less and stay in San Francisco. But I think that the 49ers will be making a big mistake to give Brandon Ayuk these options and go through with it. And they've already presented him with the options, which indicates they plan to go through with this if he likes either one. And I say that for a number of reasons. The first being, Brandon Ayuk is someone who Brock Purdy really trusts. And if Brock Purdy is going to be the face of this franchise moving forward, if you're going to commit $50 to $55 to $60 million to Brock Purdy next year on an average annual value basis, you would like him to have his number one target available. You would like to know what he looks like with a 1A wide receiver, an all-pro caliber wide receiver. Brandon Ayuk has been that. And the 49ers will be robbed of that opportunity if they trade Ayuk away. Now, if they bring in Amari Cooper, you're bringing in a receiver who is 4 years older. He's age 30. He's got 7 years, over 1,000 yards in the NFL, a more proven track record, but also he's someone who's coming off the books at the end of next season. And so he's a free agent, unlike Ayuk, who you'd be paying over the long haul. You'd be paying him for 4 or 5, who knows how many years, depending on the breakdown and the structure of that contract. But with Cooper, you bring him in, it allows you to load up for 2024 and then rethink the wide receiver position after this year. It also allows you to get that money off the books after next season and potentially redistribute it to some of the next players who will need to be paid. Obviously, Brock Purdy is at the top of that list, but Charvarius Ward and Diablo Lenore, the two 49ers cornerbacks, are also on that list. They are also due for new deals next offseason, and I would imagine that they will cost the 49ers a significant chunk of change. So the 49ers could potentially be thinking long-term here. And if they are, maybe that's one of the reasons that they're looking at the Patriots deal, which presumably includes some good draft capital, may include Kendrick Bourne, as Matt Mayoko hinted on our airwaves earlier today. But I don't know that it makes the 49ers a more legitimate Super Bowl contender in 2024. In fact, it knocks them down a peg in my book. And so if they're trying to accomplish their goal of winning sustainably for the long haul, great. A Patriots deal that includes some draft capital may do that. But if they're trying to accomplish their goal of winning a Super Bowl in 2024, I don't know what the Patriots can offer that could legitimately get them to that point. And maybe the 49ers are in this situation because they need to pay both Williams and Brandon Ayuk, and they didn't anticipate that at the beginning of this offseason. Maybe they've reached this juncture because the 49ers overplayed their hand with Ayuk. I don't know, but I do think that all of this doesn't bode all that well. I do think that any situation where you're putting this in Ayuk's hands and saying, here are your trade opportunities, go out and pursue them. I never wanted it to get to this point. I never advocated it for this to get to this point, and I think it's pretty disappointing ultimately that it has gotten to this point, because I think that Ayuk is such an instrumental player in this offense. I think that he is such a great connection with Brock Purdy, And I think that you never want things to devolve to the point where you have to trade a meaningful piece from your offense just a month before the regular season. Now, doesn't mean I wouldn't be excited about Amari Cooper playing in a 49ers uniform. Doesn't mean I don't think the 49ers could still win a Super Bowl without Brandon Ayuk. But man, it would be much more difficult, in my opinion, to do so. 925 asks on the text line, do you think the 49ers are talking to Purdy and asking if he wants the max amount of money next year or wants more talent around him? To be quite honest, I doubt those conversations are happening right now. The 49ers have been so wrapped up in trying to get all their guys under contract this offseason. They had complicated maneuvers where they had to let Eric Armstead go. They had to restructure Kyle Juszczyk. They had to give Christian McCaffrey the money that he deserved. And now they're entered camp where Brandon Ayuk is holding in and Trent Williams is holding out, and they could potentially be orchestrating a trade with Ayuk. I think that they've got an idea in their mind of what Brock Purdy will ultimately earn. They read the market. They're looking at what different quarterbacks Jordan Love and Trevor Lawrence have made, and they're looking at Tua Tagovailoa's deal and what Dak Prescott will ultimately earn, and they know where Brock Purdy will fall in all of this, and he'll probably reset the market next offseason. I don't anticipate that someone who was the 262nd overall pick is going to sit back and say, I'm going to take less money for the betterment of the team. And nor do I think Brock Purdy should do that. I think we saw Tom Brady do that late in his career, but you almost never see athletes do that, and it's floated around because you've seen it 2-3 times. It's floated around as something that more guys should do. It's not realistic to me to expect Brock Purdy to eventually take less money, to be surrounded with more talent. I think that the 49ers are in this unique situation now where they've got Brock Purdy on potentially the last year of this contract where he'll be paid a paltry sum compared to what other quarterbacks in the NFL are making. And they want to maximize the talent around him this year, which is why I was so excited about getting Brandon Ayuk under contract and watching Trent Williams this season, and why rolling into training camp was relatively disappointing when Williams didn't show up because he's holding out and Ayuk is holding in, and it didn't seem like a deal might get done imminently. And now we've got the report from Matt Mayoko that the 49ers are looking at deals where Ayuk would be headed to either Cleveland or New England, and they'd be getting something in return, something that would help them win in 2024 in return. But to me, the best piece to help them win in 2024 is Brandon Ayuk himself. And so we shall see. We shall see if Ayuk ultimately follows through with his trade request and accepts one of these deals and renegotiates an extension with one of these teams, or if he says, you know what, I've had it. I'm done. That's it. I'll sign in San Francisco, play with you guys for the long haul, ride it out with Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan. We shall see. But man, this is not the situation that any of us thought that the 49ers would be in by now. I think most of us were optimistic they'd get a deal done, and it's not great that that hasn't come to fruition. And now, the word deal could mean a trade. It's not fun, folks. On the other side, we talked plenty of Brandon Ayuk, plenty of Trent Williams. Quite honestly, I'm getting a little fatigued of it. We'll do 3 other questions I've got about the 49ers entering this 2024 season. When we come back, we'll wrap things up with some Giants baseball. I'm Kerry Crowley, rolling with you until 9 o'clock. You're listening to KNBR 104.5, 680, the Sports Leader.
Sound off on the sports leader. Sports phone KNBR keeps rolling right here and on the all-new KNBR app.
All right, we're back here on Sports Phone KNBR. Kerry Crowley hanging out with you until 9 o'clock this evening. A reminder, Sports Phone KNBR is presented by Industrial Metal Supply, online at industrialmetalsupply.com. It's metal made easy. Well, folks, there's been so much chatter on these airwaves over the last few weeks, and deservedly so, about the contract situations involving Brandon Ayuk, the 49ers wide receiver, and maybe not for long the 49ers wide receiver, and left tackle Trent Williams. I think we heard about Ayuk throughout the offseason, the saga with the contract, discussions about a potential trade near the NFL draft, but not a formal trade request until the month of July before the 49ers ultimately reported to training camp. He's doing the hold-in. Things, for the most part, seemed pretty good until the situation that's transpired over really the last 24 to 48 hours, where a number of people well connected to the 49ers, Matt Barrows of The Athletic, Matt Mayoko of NBC Sports Bay Area, who was on these airwaves earlier today. You can catch that podcast wherever you get your podcasts, looking up KNBR, discussing the fact that it's now increasingly possible that Brandon Ayuk could be traded. And that's a significant issue. And it's a hole that the 49ers, I don't think, would be easily able to fill, even if they do get a star wide receiver in return, such as Amari Cooper from the Cleveland Browns, which we've, of course, discussed this evening. And then Trent Williams, which is an entirely different issue for the 49ers, because there's really no situation in my mind where you look up and the 49ers are able to replace Trent Williams. You know, there's situations where they could trade for a wide receiver, where Ricky Pearsall comes in and, you know, helps pick up some of the lost production from Brandon Ayuk, who was second-team All-Pro last season. But Trent Williams is as good as it gets. He's a future Hall of Famer at the left tackle position. No disrespect to Jalen Moore or whoever the 49ers would try to trot out there at the left tackle spot. There's just going to be a massive and very steep drop-off in production at that position. It's been so fun to watch number 71 through the years play for the 49ers, open up holes on the left side of the line of scrimmage, particularly for Christian McCaffrey, protect Brock Purdy's blind side, and I do hope that the 49ers are able to get something done to avoid disaster entering the season without the man tasked with protecting Brock Purdy, tasked with opening up holes, like I said, for Christian McCaffrey in this 49ers run game, and really for helping set the tone for this 49ers offense. But what I wanted to do in this segment is kind of devote this airtime to some of the other concerns that I have about the 49ers right now. And I say concerns with the notion that they are mild, understanding that the 49ers are in a really good position. They're coming off of an NFC Championship appearance. The Super Bowl window has seemingly been open for 5 years now, dating back to that 2019 season. I fully anticipate they will be one of the best teams in the NFL. I have been a massive believer in Brock Purdy. I only believe that he is going to get better this season, regardless of whether he's got Ayuk out there. I think that Kyle Shanahan trusts Brock Purdy entering this season more than he's trusted a quarterback, essentially dating back to the time when Matt Ryan won MVP for him, when Shanahan was the offensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons. So I've been pretty adamant. I do believe the 49ers are going to open up this passing game. I think you're going to see them air it out a little more. You're going to see them depend a little less on McCaffrey in the run game. But with that being said, there are still some questions that I have about Brock Purdy and some concerns that I have about this 2024 season. And I think that my main concern in terms of Purdy and his development is how much better can he realistically get? We're talking about someone who turned in a remarkable season last year, one that no one, even with the most optimistic lens, would have anticipated from Purdy, the 262nd pick back in that 2022 NFL draft when he stepped in as a rookie that year, throwing 13 touchdowns, 4 picks, coming off the bench. Just a remarkable season for Brock Purdy. And then he follows it up after elbow surgery where he didn't have a full year coming in, and he was on a pitch count during training camp. Nevertheless, still finishes with tremendous stats. He finishes 4th in AP Most Valuable Player voting. He throws 31 touchdowns, just 11 interceptions, the most passing yards of any quarterback in a single season in 49ers franchise history. And remember, we can say that because he did play 16 games last year. Sam Darnold played that 17th game against the LA Rams. So Purdy's 16-game stats stack up against anyone with Montana and Young. And yes, the NFL is different these days. I'm not making that comparison. But 4,280 passing yards is a sensational number. The 49ers are incredibly fortunate to have Brock Purdy as their quarterback. But I do wonder how much left he has to grow and to hit that ceiling that he has. Because I think when Brock Purdy was coming out of Iowa State, and the reason that the 49ers committed to drafting him is they saw him as someone who had a relatively high floor. You're talking about a player who had made a ton of college starts and, didn't have necessarily the arm strength of the guys that were going in the first, second, and third rounds that year, didn't necessarily have the same accuracy. You looked at that senior season at Iowa State, and there were some question marks about Brock Purdy. And look, durability was never a question, but you did think, you're looking at someone who might be a little slighter compared to the average NFL quarterback. You're looking at someone who takes a lot of risks. There's the viral highlight of him throwing it over his helmet back at Iowa State, getting picked off in that situation. We've seen him in a 49ers uniform. One of his greatest skills is his elusiveness in the pocket, but I do think at times he can be a little daring in terms of the moves that he makes to spin out of trouble. And, the 49ers have been very fortunate, I think, with their turnover luck under Brock Purdy. I think that there's been times where he's put the ball in jeopardy when he has not been picked off or been sack fumbled. And I do think that if Brock Purdy is going to take the next step forward in his game, ball security is going to be absolutely pivotal for him this year. And so I wonder, did we see the absolute ceiling of Brock Purdy last season, finishing fourth in MVP voting, or is there a better version of Brock Purdy, even if Brandon Ayuk is not on this roster? Can Deebo Samuel, can Ricky Pearsall, can George Kittle, can the other 49ers players who he'll rely on, McCaffrey and Jawan Jennings, can they unlock an even better version coming off of this first full healthy offseason where he is the starter? I think that we're going to find out early this season. We're going to get a good gauge of how much Kyle Shanahan trusts him and how much the 49ers do ultimately open up this passing game. So I think one of my big questions entering 2024 is how much better can Brock Purdy realistically be compared to the 2023 version that we saw where he was so dominant in leading the 49ers, 12 wins in his starts a season ago. I think the next question for me, and really a lot of questions I have, are all encompassing on the defensive side of the ball. You could go position group by position group. You could look at the offensive line. How effective will Leonard Floyd be opposite Nick Bosa? How will the 49ers be able to make up for the early season absence of Dre Greenlaw at the linebacker position? Is Jair Brown ready to step in and play at a Pro Bowl level while Talanoa Hufanga continues to recover from that ACL injury? How's their cornerback depth chart stacking up? Is Emmanuel Moody someone who they want to sign long-term next offseason? Is Diamond Lenore someone they want to sign long-term next offseason? So you could go under the microscope, you could go micro and small picture, but I'm going to zoom out and go big picture with my next question for the 49ers, and that is entering 2024, can new defensive coordinator Nick Sorensen and new assistant on that side of the ball, Brandon Staley, have this group playing at a more cohesive level and a higher level earlier in the season than Steve Wilks did? Because there was very clearly a disconnect between Kyle Shanahan and Steve Wilks last year. For whatever reason, and I was a big believer in the hiring of Wilks, and I'll admit, I didn't foresee the issues. I thought that it was smart for the 49ers to go out and get a proven defensive coordinator in making up for the loss of D'Amico Ryans. They built in-house with Robert Saleh and then D'Amico Ryans, and I really felt like if the 49ers were going to evolve and adapt defensively to some of the changes that had transpired around the league on offense, maybe they needed a fresh perspective to come in and help with Kyle Shanahan, but it clearly just did not gel, did not jive with what the 49ers were trying to do. I think that some of the 49ers players were uncertain about the direction of the defense. Most notably, Fred Warner last season seemed at times to, not necessarily do his own thing defensively, but maybe try and assume a little bit more control defensively than he has in previous seasons. And of course, I think that Fred Warner absolutely deserves the right to call a lot of defense. He's the guy out there. He's the guy making difficult decisions in the moment on the field. And Steve Wilks was up in the booth for part of the season, then on the sideline for part of the season. So I just think it would benefit the 49ers if Nick Sorensen, the guy who was the in-house replacement, who's been in this Shanahan coaching tree for a while now, if he can get this group playing on the same page early in the season, because this is a 49ers team that's now playing with a target on its back and really has played with the target on its back every single season. But I think you could say that last year, in the NFC, it was the Philadelphia Eagles because they had reached the Super Bowl. They had taken the Kansas City Chiefs to the brink last year. Now the 49ers are back. They're the NFC champions, and they're going to be tested, not necessarily right out of the gates, where you've got the Jets, you've got the Vikings, you've got the Rams, you've got the Patriots, then the Cardinals. I think you'll see some softer offenses at the beginning of the season. So if Sorensen can get that group with all the personnel I mentioned playing at a high level consistently early in the season, I think that that will enable the 49ers to get off to the start that they desperately need to in taking advantage of this softer schedule that I perceive at the beginning of the season. Because you don't want to have a situation where you head into week 7, Kansas City Chiefs at home, week 8, Dallas Cowboys at home, and then you follow that up later on in the season with Packers, Bills, Bears, who will be much better this year with Caleb Williams, Lions toward the end of the year, where your defense still is facing the kind of question marks that I think that Steve Wilks and his crew was facing late last season. So I don't know exactly what this will look like, if it's a sign that we can tell from how the 49ers are just simply shutting down their opponents on the field, if they look more comfortable in pass coverage, if we see some different defensive looks from this team this year under Sorensen, or if it will just be something where, hey, everyone's communicating the same way in public, in the media, with the press. They're all praising Sorensen and Staley for the work that they've done. And so I think that it's important to kind of take a step back and look closely at the beginning of the season and see how much this defense is playing in sync relative to where it was last season. So if we're talking non-Trent Williams and Brandon Ayuk questions right now for the 49ers, as we're a little over a month to go until the start of the regular season, Monday Night Football against the New York Jets. Obviously, 1, Brock Purdy, how much better can he realistically be? 2, will Nick Sorensen have the defense playing at a higher level earlier on in the season than Steve Wilks did? And 3 for me is, this is true even if Trent Williams is on this team week 1 and starting week 1, but can the 49ers do a good enough job protecting Brock Purdy? Because I think that this has the potential to be maybe a $60 million question for San Francisco in this franchise moving forward. Brock Purdy is someone who got injured in his rookie season. He had that elbow issue at the end that required surgery after, of course, suffering that injury against the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think that you want to avoid a scenario where you're dealing with an injured quarterback for the second time in 3 seasons. How do you avoid that? By max protecting, by ensuring that he is standing upright in the pocket for most of his dropbacks and ensuring that he takes a minimal amount of contact this year. And just with the way the 49ers have structured this roster, with all of the different superstars that they have to pay, and they've got 2 right now that they're still looking to pay in Trent Williams and Brandon Ayuk, or at least looking for situations where they can get paid in the Ayuk case. I think you look at and maybe are a little bit uncomfortable with the state of this offensive line, because right guard has kind of been a turnstile already during training camp. Spencer Burford's out, John Feliciano not healthy, and so Dominic Pooney, the rookie out of Kansas, 3rd-round draft pick, he's been slotting in, and it's a lot to trust a rookie on this offensive line. You go back a few years ago, Kyle Shanahan didn't want to play Aaron Banks, the 2nd-round pick out of Notre Dame. We were all wondering, something wrong with Aaron Banks. Is this guy just going to be a complete dud? And ultimately, Banks worked his way into the 49ers starting lineup in his 2nd season. He turned out to be a very solid left guard, a replacement for Laken Tomlinson that the 49ers desperately needed at that position. Cheap and a guy playing well on his rookie contract, and someone who I could project to having a long future with the 49ers. But nevertheless, it's a clear sign that Shanahan does not necessarily trust rookies on the line right out of the bat. So you've got Chris Forster, the offensive line coach, with the exceptionally challenging task of getting this group ready for the start of the regular season, not quite knowing if you will have Trent Williams right now, although the 49ers maintaining that quiet confidence with Williams, and then looking at the rest of the offensive line. Jake Brendel's been a really good story at the center position. The 49ers didn't use much draft capital to get Jake Brendel in this franchise, and you look at his production at the center position, really no questions for me offensively. He wasn't a liability. He's not someone who I look at and I star every play and I say, hey, I want to watch this guy like I want to watch Trent Williams, but I think I've got a little bit more confidence in Brendel right now at the center position than I've had the right tackle position for the last few years. And I understand the 49ers like Colton McKivitz. I understand that he's taken a step forward and he's proven that he can be versatile on this offensive line, playing some center, playing some guard, and then last season playing some right tackle for this 49ers team and doing a pretty good job at it. But again, it's a position where I don't think the 49ers have felt at their most comfortable for the last few seasons. I think that in a perfect world, and this is a problem that so many teams have right now just because there's a shortage of offensive linemen who can keep up with these outstanding defensive linemen across the NFL. But I think in a perfect world, the 49ers will potentially seek an upgrade at that position. They were willing to let go of Mike McGlinchey, who they didn't want to pay the contract that the Denver Broncos ultimately signed him to, but I do think that you look at McKivitz compared to McGlinchey, the 49ers have made an upgrade there, but how much of an upgrade, I do wonder. And so all of that is to say, each of these individual guys bands together as part of a bigger offensive line, and they have the extraordinary challenge of ensuring that Brock Purdy can stay healthy and upright through a 17-game regular season. We're talking about someone who, again, doesn't necessarily have the same physical tools as some of the other great quarterbacks in the NFL, but he processes at such an elite level, and I do hope that having a healthy offseason for Purdy will enable him to make a step forward in his game, however that looks, whether it's with arm strength, whether it's with more zip, with more confidence in his decision making, although I don't think he's ever lacked for confidence since taking over as the 49ers starting quarterback. I do think that if they're able to unlock yet another level for Purdy, and if they're able to keep him healthy this season, they'll feel even more comfortable next offseason when they go into those negotiations. And again, if you think that the Ayuk contract is big, if you think that a Trent Williams contract is big, put those two numbers together, whatever each of these guys individually procure from whichever teams ultimately pay them, and I do think it will be Williams with the 49ers, and I have no idea anymore what it will be for Ayuk. You're probably looking at the average annual value of the contract that Brock Purdy will ultimately sign next offseason. It could be upward of $60 million if he takes a step forward this year. 49ers want to be absolutely sure that they're paying the right guy, which again is a reason I believe they will open up this playbook. Kyle Shanahan will pass the ball a little bit more just to really take note and take absolute certainty that Purdy is the perfect guy to be the face of the franchise moving forward. Again, I have no doubt, but when you're paying someone that much money, you want to do everything you can to properly evaluate and analyze them. I'm Kerry Crowley. This show is Sports Phone KNBR. When we come back, a little bit more 49ers talk. We'll wrap up with the San Francisco Giants as well in D.C. for this 4-game set against the Nationals. You're listening to KNBR 104.5, 680, the sports leader.
Speak your mind on the sports leader. Sports Phone KNBR keeps coming at you. Streaming live at twitch.tv/the sports leader.
All right, we're back here on Sports Phone KNBR. Kerry Crowley closing up the shop for the evening, wrapping things up, talking San Francisco Giants baseball as they pick up the 4-1 victory over the Washington Nationals this evening. Folks, this was the game, as we talked about at the beginning of the show, that has eluded the Giants for so long. The game where they get back to 500. First time back at 500 since they were 29-29, entering play way back on June 1st. So a big achievement for this Giants team amid what has been a disappointing season to date. But at this point, we can now talk about what's possible for this Giants squad. I don't think that any of us can sit here this evening and say that it's likely that the San Francisco Giants go on a playoff run. I don't think that you can objectively look at the National League wildcard standings and say, well, the Braves, the Padres, the Diamondbacks, the Mets, the Pirates, the Cardinals, all of those teams can be tracked down right now. But I do think that what you can say now that this team is back at 500 is, hey, is it able to live up to its potential during the final 2 months of the season? And is the group that they have assembled right now good enough to potentially beat up on the schedule that they have over the next few weeks? And I think that right now, the Giants have at least kept the window open temporarily, which of course is what everyone wanted to see for this ball club, because it's a team that never realized its full potential early in the season. Jung-Hoo Lee going down with the injury, Blake Snell being injured twice during the first half of the season, Lamont Wade Jr. going down when he was at his hottest. Now Elliot Ramos is a little bit banged up for this Giants ball club. Robbie Ray didn't come back until after the All-Star break. Alex Cobb never made a start for this Giants team. Tyro Estrada's been out. Wilmer Flores is out right now, and yet the Giants have found their way back to 500, have had some really good stories, including Tyler Fitzgerald, who we touched on at the beginning of tonight's show, his 11th home run in 17 games, the fourth shortstop to ever do that in Major League Baseball. And there's reason to feel confident in this Giants ball club because of the schedule that it has against this team moving forward. And so, look, they've taken 3 of 4 to start this road trip. The road has absolutely haunted the Giants so far this season. I think they're still 10 under 500 on the road, even with tonight's 4-1 win over the Washington Nationals. They've got 3 more in D.C. It's imperative that they win this series. Then they come home and they take on a Detroit Tigers team that's starting to give up a little bit in that AL Central. The Braves will be difficult in a 4-game set at Oracle Park. But again, if you want to make up ground in this National League wildcard race, what better way to do it than against a team you're competing with for a playoff spot? You've got the A's and the White Sox after that for 5 games. Giants have to win at minimum 4 of those. The White Sox absolutely abysmal, as we know, as that losing streak sits at 20. The Seattle Mariners, the Milwaukee Brewers at the end of the month, that's where things start to get harder. The schedule much more difficult in the month of September. But if the Giants can give themselves a chance, if they can get 5-6 games over 500 here, it will give that clubhouse the belief that they can at least play meaningful baseball deep into September and give themselves a shot. And that's really what Bob Melvin's 2023 San Diego Padres failed to do. It was Bob Melvin's undoing in San Diego, that the team was hovering at or around 500 all season, never quite had an identity, and that's why I've been hard on Melvin and this Giants ball club over the last few over the last few weeks, I should say, because over the last 2 seasons for Melvin, he's had 2 different ball clubs, 2 different rosters, but 2 very similar stories. And so I want to see the Giants break this trend. I want to see them develop an identity. I want to see them beat up on bad baseball teams, as the Padres finally started to do during the final 2 weeks of last season. It was too little too late for San Diego, and that's what ultimately led to Melvin having an opening to come to San Francisco and join the Giants as their manager this year. But again, the Giants have the bad teams in front of them on the schedule right now. We just ran through it, and I do believe that tonight was further evidence that the Giants have, or at least are starting to form, an identity for this ball club. It took, 114 games? This team's 57-57 with 48 left to go. But right now, after Logan Webb turns in 5 2/3 innings of one-run ball tonight, I think it's fair to say that the starting pitching is very clearly the identity for this ball club. Farhan Zaidi said as much. The Giants president of baseball operations declared at the trade deadline that he did not give up Blake Snell, did not want to part with Robbie Ray because he wanted to see what this rotation could do with Ray, with Birdsong, with Harrison, with Webb, with Snell all together. And since he made that declaration, Logan Webb has now gone out and thrown 14 2/3 innings of one-run ball. Blake Snell, the no-hitter in his first start, coming back from Farhan Zaidi's comments. You saw Robbie Ray pitch well on Sunday against the Cincinnati Reds. Kyle Harrison was the one outlier, of course, with his disastrous outing against the Reds on Saturday evening, but you can bet on him bouncing back because he's done that from time to time this season. Just 22 years old, but has shown he has the ability to overcome the adversity that he's faced early in his major league career, and I'm excited to see Birdsong back on the mound again for the Giants in the immediate future. And so you look at what this ball club can do right now. 57 57. Again, it is an uphill road. There is no one here tonight saying the Giants have shown what I've needed to see over the last week to become a playoff team. But I do think that the next 6, 7, 8 weeks have become very interesting because of a number of factors. In one, that they've developed this identity a little bit over the last week or so. Again, a week, 2 weeks doesn't make an identity, but you will see this over the course of the next month if the pitchers hold up their end of the bargain. And two, I think we're going to see a Giants team start to play a brand of baseball that very much resembles some Giants teams that fans fell in love with. And it is not necessarily going to be easy to fall in love with this team over the final 48, but I will say this. If the Giants go on a magical run, if they make things interesting down the stretch, they're going to be playing a lot of torturous baseball. They're going to be playing a lot of games that make you pull your hair out, that makes your hair go gray, that makes your hair fall out. They are going to be playing this because their brand of baseball is reliant on great starting pitching and no relievers messing things up, as Taylor Rogers very nearly did in the 8th inning before coming back with back-to-back strikeouts this evening. It's going to be reminiscent of the ball club in 2009 that you saw that ultimately missed out on the playoffs, and somewhat reminiscent, albeit not as good, as the ball club that was hovering around 500 through the first half of the season in 2010 before making that second half run that really started in the month of July. Again, you can't draw the direct comparison, and I don't think anyone would, but I do think that you can say, hey, it's a team with great starting pitching. It's a team that needs its relievers to step up, and it's also a team that needs timely hitting. And tonight, the Giants didn't get timely hits in big spots. 5th inning, 1st and 2nd, Patrick Corbin's on the ropes. Michael Conforto grounds into the 1-6-3 double play. It's not good. It's not good. They had Patrick Corbin and had the ability to remove the National starting pitcher from that ballgame, break it open, and Conforto hit into that double play at an inopportune moment. The worst situation for the Giants, though, came in the 8th inning. They're up 4-1, opportunity to add on. It's 2nd and 3rd, no one out. Lamont Wade Jr. had done his job. Conforto had done his job with the double out to left center field. Matt Chapman comes up. He grounds out to shortstop. Lamont Wade Jr. can't break for home in that situation. The knee's not good enough. Then Casey Schmidt comes up. He grounds out to shortstop. And Gerard Encarnacion bats, and he strikes out. Somehow, however, the Washington Nationals did the exact same thing in the bottom half of the 8th inning. They got 2nd and 3rd against Taylor Rogers, a chance to make this game very interesting, and they were unable to do so. It was tortuous in that 8th inning, and Camilo Doval, who hadn't pitched in, 8 days since his last appearance against the Colorado Rockies, he comes in, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, it's never good when your closer's been out for a week, off the sidelines, on the shelf. You never know what's going to happen. And Camilo Doval struck out the side. He made it painless. I mean, there were no qualms in that 9th inning, no issues, no problems for Camilo. But nevertheless, you had those situations at the plate in the 5th and the 8th inning where the Giants didn't come through, and it put added pressure on the bullpen. The one situation where the Giants really did come through tonight was Matt Chapman delivering that big 2-out home run for this ball club early in the game in the 3rd inning against Patrick Corbin. Following up Tyler Fitzgerald, who hit the leadoff home run that got the Giants started on the right note tonight. It was Chapman with 2 on, 2 out in the 3rd inning who hit a mammoth shot out to left field, kept it fair, and Matt Chapman's been quite a find for the Giants this season. His WAR, wins above replacement, which I know not a lot of people love, but that number has crept up above 5 this year. He's been worth the contract the Giants gave him, and it's timely hitting like that is going to carry this ball club through the I can't say second half of this season. I can say the final 2 months of this season. We've seen the evidence in early August thus far, and we should see the evidence if the Giants pitchers, again, hold up their end of the bargain moving forward into September. So it wasn't pretty. In fact, it was difficult at times to watch this team, to watch Conforto bounce into that double play, to watch Chapman and Schmidt and then Encarnacion come up short in the 8th inning when you have the chance to knock out a Nationals team that, quite frankly, isn't nearly as good and has kind of given up on the season. And you want to see teams like that in the month of August. You want to see teams like that right after the trade deadline, where they're weakened a little bit by the moves that their general managers and president of baseball operations made to weaken the club this year to focus on next year. And I think that the Giants will see a number of teams like that in the near future. Like I mentioned at the top of this segment, you've got the Detroit Tigers at home, you've got the Oakland A's on the road, the White Sox at home, and then you kick off the month of September wrapping up a series against a Miami Marlins team that's absolutely dreadful. The other piece of good news for the Giants is they play the majority of teams in front of them in the NL wildcard race down the stretch. And so we're going to figure out not only if they can beat up on bad teams, but in this final 48-game stretch, if they can beat up on the teams that they were supposed to be better than at the beginning of this season. They were supposed to outrank at this time of the year in the NL wildcard standings. They've got the Diamondbacks for 6 in the month of September, the Padres for 3 at home, the Padres for 3 on the road. That makes 6. You've got the St. Louis Cardinals to finish the season. They're a team that's starting to trend in the wrong direction right now. And of course, I mentioned that 4-game set against the Atlanta Braves coming up next week at Oracle Park. So while the Giants are not where they want to be, the Giants aren't where any of us thought they might be at this juncture of the season when it began. They're finally back at 500. I think they'd lost something like 7 in a row trying to get back to 500. They come close, inch closer, and they finally did it tonight behind their ace, Logan Webb, who's been a tone setter for this team since the second half of the 2021 season, and they're going to continue to need him to be that tone setter down the stretch. It's on Webb, it's on Snell, and it's on the rotation that Farhan Zaidi envisioned way back in the month of March when he signed Blake Snell to have the top 2 finishers in NL Cy Young Award voting last season. Pitching on back-to-back days, the Giants have only been able to do it a couple of times this season. We saw it work well for the Giants last week with Webb throwing that shutout, of course, against the Oakland Athletics, and then Snell wrapping things up with the no-hitter against the Cincinnati Reds. And we'll need to see it a lot more down the stretch for the Giants to be successful and deliver on the vision that this franchise had. Again, I'm not saying that anything is likely to happen. I'm not saying that you're going to see magic. But what I am saying is if the Giants do make this interesting down the stretch, it will be with a tortuous form of baseball that makes you worry, that makes your stomach uneasy every single night. And folks, as long as we're tuned in until the end of September, and as long as the Giants give themselves a shot, I think that would exceed our expectations from where this team was a month ago, toiling, unable to get back to 500, worried about it standing, worried if it would be trading guys away at the deadline. Now we know what this team looks like. Now we know where this team stands, and now it's a 48-game sprint to the finish. I am Kerry Crowley. I want to thank everyone who tuned in to tonight's show. Always appreciate our callers as well. Appreciate everyone who will be tuning in this week. I've got 2 more sports phones. I've got a show on Thursday with Tom after the Giants wrap up this series against the Washington Nationals. And hopefully we'll get a resolution to this Brandon Ayuk situation somewhere along the way as well. Thank you to Raph for producing and booking a great show this evening. Thanks to our guest, Jack Loader, tonight for calling in. Always appreciate the KNBR digital department and the work that they do. I am Kerry Crowley signing off on Sports Phone KNBR. You're listening to KNBR 104.5 680, the Sports Leader.